Welcome everyone to Health Coach TV. I'm your host, Dr. Shauna, and boy, do we have a great show for you guys on SIBO. Welcome, Karen Mitchell.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to be here with you today.
I am so excited. You guys are in for a treat. This gal knows her stuff. So we're going to talk about what is SIBO, and if you have it, how do you manage it? So let me give Karen a proper introduction. So after battling her own SIBO and thyroid issues for more than 15 years, Karen Mitchell finally was able to heal SIBO and bring her Hashimoto's into remission. She then became passionate about empowering others to do the same and reclaim their energy, mental clarity, vitality, and fully show up for life. She's a national board certified health and wellness coach and a functional nutrition lifestyle practitioner. She's worked for 4 years at Enzo Natural Medicine Clinic and regularly receives referrals from doctors and other health practitioners to assist with people who have challenging gut health issues, which has really allowed her to hone her skills. Guys, she knows more about SIBO than anybody else I know. So she's the person to talk to if this is an issue for you. So she works with people both locally and globally, in person and online, and she has worked closely with a veteran service organization to support both retired and active duty military improve their overall health and wellness. I know the veterans have a soft spot in her heart she's got there. And Karen lives with her husband and teenage son and 2 dogs in Bozeman, Montana, and although she has just admitted to me earlier that she would really like to have a mini donkey. So I'm not sure about all of that. But welcome, Karen. I am so glad you're here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and an honor. Thank you for letting me just chat about SIBO.
Awesome. And I'm not sure where the donkey fits in, but there's no prize donkey at the end of this. And I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but we'll leave it at that. So I would love if you would tell people kind of 2 things. What is it that you do now, but more importantly, for our more broader audience who may not have heard of SIBO, what is SIBO? And that's spelled SIBO, in case you're wondering how that is. So Karen,
For sure.
what is it that you do? Tell us how that all is.
Yeah. I empower moms with SIBO and thyroid issues to heal their gut, boost their energy, and reclaim their mental clarity and vitality so that they can fully and authentically show up for life. So you're correct. SIBO is SIBO. Some people say SIBO. I say SIBO. Might be like potato.
Yeah.
But small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They've changed some of the nomenclature. So EMO is also part of that, intestinal methane overgrowth. But basically what it is bacteria that shows up in our small intestine when it shouldn't be there.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. And wreaks a lot of havoc. And we're going to dive into that when we start to hear about your story. So let's hear about your story. What is it that had you get into this line of work of helping people with SIBO and really so much more in terms of gut health and Hashimoto and autoimmune and all of that? But tell us a bit about your story. How did this all come about?
Sure. I mean, I had a SIBO diagnosis. It was a number of years ago now. And, but on the way to that diagnosis, there wasn't really any one moment where I was like, wow, I feel horrible. It was more like a slow burn of like one thing after another, kind of adding up as I went along. In my early 20s, I had a multinodule goiter that I ended up having removed. And everything was actually okay for a while, but then I had my one and only pregnancy, and life was pretty good. I was feeling great until I wasn't feeling all that great. And I started to experience fatigue and belly bloat and brain fog, and then trouble sleeping and losing my hair. And the doctors just chalked it up to being a new mom. And maybe they just said, go sleep some more. But that didn't really actually seem to fix anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just went along with these intense symptoms for a really long time. And at some point, I just realized that I needed to advocate for myself. So I found a naturopath who then diagnosed me with hypothyroid. And I went on meds, but they actually made me feel horrible. I felt like I was on speed. So I went back off of them, but I still didn't feel good. So I started changing my diet, and it helped a little. And then, but nothing at that point seemed to help for more than a few weeks. Like I would make a change, it would help for a few weeks, but then it felt like I was right back to where I was. And then at some point I started to gain weight, even though I was eating less and less. And so at that point, I was just really just dying to know what else I could do. And I really remember when my naturopath was like, well, let's test you for SIBO. And this was a long time ago, back when SIBO honestly was understood to be a phenomenon back in the 1960s, but it hasn't really gained a lot of traction in the many years. So she was really on the edge when she said, let's test you for SIBO. And it came back positive, and for both methane and hydrogen dominant SIBO. And at that point, I was really excited in one way because I felt I found the answer to my health woes. But on the other hand, I was really overwhelmed, and there was a lot of anxiety. Everything that I read about SIBO just was complicated, and everyone was saying it's so hard to heal. So at that point, I just dove in to try to find everything that I could possibly know about SIBO, books, on the internet, everything. And that was basically the beginning of my multi-year process to heal my gut. At that point in time, we also figured out that I had intestinal parasites and worms and heavy metal poisoning and all these things. And then at some point, I ended up with a Hashimoto's thyroiditis diagnosis on top of it. Slowly I realized that I wasn't going to heal my body with just diet and treatments alone. And, I looked at mindset, I looked at stress, I looked at the idea that symptom was a root cause of just an unhealthy gut, but how did the gut get unhealthy? How did it get there? So I started looking at myself from a holistic approach, attending to my physical body as well as my emotional body. I used mindfulness, yoga, meditation retreats, neural repatterning, and then even somatic experiencing and therapy. You name it, I've done it. And now, I feel like my body is finally healing, and it's still healing, but it just keeps getting better and better. Right now I don't have active Hashimoto's. It's been in remission for about 5 years now. And SIBO is in remission too, which is amazing. My energy is great. I feel good. I love to mountain bike and be outside in the woods. So that helps a ton that I can do that and have energy for that. And then that's what inspired me to become a national board certified health and wellness coach, as well as a functional nutrition practitioner.
Awesome. So SIBO, Hashimoto's, and all of that, and getting on the other side of it, a long journey, tried everything. We're going to, in this interview, dive deeper into piecing out, okay, well, which one of those things worked? What was it? What worked? What didn't work? How do you get on the other side of it? We'll get to that. But actually, I know that your interest, it's almost like it pre-paved the way, but your interest in gut health, and you didn't originally come by it professionally. You were you did all sorts of things in your professional life, but gut health was not one of them at all, not initially. But it was something else that predated, even before you had SIBO. You were already interested in gut health, which I just got to say, take a moment to pause on that. Most people years ago, now everybody's talking about gut health, but most people years ago were not thinking, not even doctors really were talking about gut health years ago. So I almost feel like this was, you are so good at what you do. I just can't emphasize this enough to the audience. You're so good and so knowledgeable about this and all the different protocols and all of that. But if we look back, even before you had the diagnosis, you were already interested in gut health. So tell us a little bit about that. I feel like it was kind of like this was meant to be. Like, this is you doing this healing work was absolutely like predetermined. But tell us a little bit about how you started getting interested in the gut.
Yeah. I feel like it was meant to be too, to be honest. But it really all started when my son was born, and he's 17 now. So that was a long time ago. And he was born via C-section. And when he got to about 1.5, he was not thriving. And when he first came out, he had diarrhea all the time. And I had gone to my doctors multiple times and said, I don't feel like this is normal. I think we should do something. And I was dismissed. I basically was told, this is normal. Don't worry about it. This is just him. And I was like, no, I don't think that's normal. It might have been like just a little bit of the rebel in me. I was like, I don't think so. So he started then getting skin rashes. And then right around his second birthday, he ended up having just like debilitating stomach aches. And he ended up having tantrums at that point. Like, and I know most people, kids, a 2-year-old, they have temper tantrums, but these were different. He would be just like playing and then just like buckle over in pain. Like he would grab his belly as a little 2-year-old, and it broke my heart. So I started just digging in. I kind of was like, you know what, I'm going to figure this out by myself. And I searched for answers. And to be honest, the internet wasn't really a huge thing back then. Like we used it, but it wasn't where we had the amount of information that we have today. So I figured out first to test him for food allergies and intolerances. And he actually was allergic or intolerant to every food out there, and could be anaphylaxis for beef and amaranth, which is kind of nuts, but he couldn't eat anything. The only thing he could eat was rice and chicken. And so I took the time. I had read an article that I found someplace by just serendipity, and I started reading it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of a couple of things here, and we're going to see what happens. And it had to get a little worse before we got better. And he was also potty training, so things got a little messy, but he started to get better as I was removing foods, and how he was down to almost no food. So I was like, wow, look at this. He's feeling better. And then basically that became my hobby for a very long time. And I started helping others and their kids who were having gut stuff. And I learned about how to not use gluten and other inflammatory foods in my cooking. And that's really kind of how it all started.
So you really had a head start when you entered into the world of SIBO for yourself. So interesting about that. And then, and why did you get it? And we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that kind of stuff. So getting on the other side of SIBO and Hashimoto's and helping your son, is that what led you to become a health coach and like, hey, I got to help other people with this?
Yeah, I really at some point felt like, no, this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people and help them get answers and understand how to take care of themselves. I really believe in the taking agency over our own health, and for us to have the answers within us. And I wanted to help people get to that point so that they could have health. Yeah.
And to know that there are things that you can do, but also to know that you're likely going to initially get dismissed and said, yeah, it happens to everybody, it's normal. But you're like, in your heart, you're like, this can't be normal. Like, this shouldn't be normal. It might be common, but it shouldn't be normal. And it shouldn't be common. But often, as we talk about, it can be. You on your way to become on the way to become a health coach, though, it wasn't just a direct line. You were on your way to get your master's, right?
I was on my way to get a master's in holistic nutrition, and I had done all my prerequisites, like post-baccalaureate work. And and I realized, well, I had this fire to help people. And I was like, wait, I did all that work. I was in the program, getting going. And I was like, this is going to take too long. Like, I don't want to sit here and just be studying all day long for years. I want to help people now. So I started researching other ways, and I hadn't actually heard about health coaching until then. And then I heard about it. And then I started out at IIN, Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And then from there, I just kept going.
Yeah, it was kind of it's like things are being put in your path to just follow the trail here, and you're picking them up. And hey, master's in holistic nutrition, that sounds like the best idea initially. And it could have been, but then this snags your attention, and it's like, ooh, I could really work with people. Kind of like
Yeah.
what you were doing with those other moms when they had their toddlers and struggling with their gut health. You were kind of health coaching before you knew what health coaching was.
Yeah.
And then just out of a natural desire to help people and share what you had figured out. And then of course you've figured out lots of stuff since then. So tell us a little bit about how you work with your clients. Like how does that work? Who are they? How do you work with them? Tell us a little bit
Sure.
about.
Yeah. Well, most of my clients that have SIBO are usually moms. Although I do have a lot of men that I work with, especially because the men that I work with the Veteran Service Organization, they're about 95% men. But most moms are busy. They're taking care of kids, houses. They're trying to take care of their own emotional and mental state, as well as that of their family, taking care of all those things. Most of these women have gained weight, or they just don't feel all that great in their bodies, or they feel bloated, or they are not feeling energetic, like they can't chase those little kids around. Or sometimes a lot of the moms, honestly, I have moms that have like little kids at home, but I do have a lot of moms that the kids have left the house now that they, empty nesters, who look back and they're like, I got to fix this now because I'm seeing the rest of my life here. So a lot of the times I work with education and advocacy, because I believe that if we all have our own wellness toolbox, that we can go forward and feel our best for the rest of our life. So I created a program that helps to walk people through an understanding of like what's going on in their body functionally, and how they can make lasting change, and how it doesn't have to be that hard. I mean, I have a lot of passion for what I do, so I'm 150% devoted to my clients' health and well-being, and I provide a lot of accountability and support. And I see people both here in Bozeman, Montana, in person, and also via telehealth. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that they get results. I mean, honestly, I just want people to feel better. And last week, one of my clients was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. She came in with daily hives, which actually was not what she came in for. She didn't say that she had hives until we'd been working for a couple weeks. But when she said she had regular hives, I was like, ooh, that's a clue. So we started working on her gut health. She thought hives were just a part of her life. And within a month and a little more, she stopped having daily hives. She lost 10 pounds, and all her stomach aches disappeared. And she actually feels like more mentally clear and less reactive in her workplace. And watching clients like have that kind of success is just really lights me up.
That soul satisfying that I talk about. It's so fun to be able to be a part of that transformation. So good. I love that. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of those results. So for you, Karen, overcoming the years of your own struggles with SIBO and Hashimoto's and getting on the other side of it, now being really what I would call a center of excellence for that, you have doctors referring people to you to help manage these complicated gut health cases. From your perspective, what do you see is the biggest myth when it comes to SIBO?
Yeah, I think the biggest myth of what comes to SIBO is that SIBO is a root cause. And I will say, no, it is not. SIBO is not a root cause. SIBO is a symptom, and it's a symptom of something else that's hiding underneath it, that's allowing the SIBO to take place, to be there.
Yeah, yeah. And you had mentioned something about doctors talking about how chronic this is, like it's everywhere.
Sure. Yeah. I think, a lot of doctors will say that SIBO, in 2/3 of the people with SIBO, that it will become a chronic condition that they'll always have to deal with. And to me, that doesn't sit well with me. I'm like, how could anything that our body is in a state of dysfunction like that, how can that be chronic? How come we can't get it back in alignment? That's what I'm always thinking. And so, as I go through that, I'm like, okay, SIBO, if 2/3 of the people it's chronic, well, what can we do to make that unchronic? And looking and alleviating or supporting the root cause is super important. But I think what's really important to remember is that the gut is the foundation of health. And just like Hippocrates said all those years ago, it's true. And the body also is an incredible machine, and it's capable of feeling its best when we give it the right support. I like to say, when we support it where it needs it and get out of the way when we don't, the body will want to reach that homeostasis point. And I think the other thing that's really important to remember is that healing is not just about the food that we eat. It's about our relationships, how we move our body, how we think, how we show up in the world, what our purpose is, how we feel. That's so important. And lastly, our relationship to stress is a huge piece of the puzzle. If our nervous system is stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, our body just can't heal. So understanding how our nervous system is showing up for us and where we tend to be, whether it's in our fight, flight, or freeze, or our rest, digest, and heal, is a super big part about that.
Yeah. So really looking at addressing that, knowing SIBO is not the root cause. There is another layer of a root underneath that. So addressing the imbalance that is that, and that helps you get over it. And then multi-pronged approach, stress, food, mindset, all of that is so important. Really, really great ideas. Let's go right into tips. What are some tips that you can share with our viewers who might be suffering with with SIBO or gut health, or maybe Hashimoto's, or some of the symptoms? Maybe they don't have a diagnosis, but maybe they don't have energy and they've got bloating and stuff like that. What are some things that you can share with our viewers here?
Well, first of all, I know this is going to sound crazy, but please remember that it's not all about the food that we actually eat that pass through our lips. There's so much more to the puzzle. And I see a lot of people that come in, they're eating 2 foods and they still have really bad gut issues. So that's our first clue, that it's not just about the food. Food plays a role, but there is more than that. And also, I think the important thing is like it's a marathon, not a sprint. When we have chronic health issues or chronic gut issues, it's not going to be a quick fix. And in some ways it shouldn't be, because what we want to do is create new habits over time. And those new habits become doable and repeatable. So those baby steps really make a change. So even if it's one thing at a time and you start to feel a little bit better and a little bit better, then you just add to that rather than throwing everything out and starting all fresh and new. And then we also want to look at, the whole picture. If we're going to get results, we have to look at all the pieces that go into making this body, both the physical body and the emotional body tick, because that's a big part of it. There are some specific things I can offer for people with SIBO. Of course, you can follow a low FODMAP diet. There is also a SIBO specific diet, but again, these are not meant to be followed long term. One of the biggest things is to chew your food. Mindful eating, like actually chew your food and take the time to get that basically helps everything downstream to function better when we're chewing. And then I like to go at least 12 hours at night with not eating anything. If a person is able, some people aren't quite ready for that, but 12 hours of a break of food overnight or any calories helps the body to digest and allow it to settle and kind of like work through what it had. And then digestive enzymes in the form of a supplement can be super helpful with people that have chronic gut issues, as well as digestive bitters can be helpful too. But with all of these things, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to look at the root cause, right? We have to really go to check what that imbalance is stemming from. So these are quick tips and they will help in the short term, but I'm looking for the missing link and the long-term support. I want the end game.
Right. And, on a quick little interview video here, you can only go so deep, but that kind of points people in the right direction of things that they can do right now. But yeah, emphasizing the big picture, and taking a holistic approach and how important that is. One thing I've noticed as people are helping their clients with something specific like SIBO or thyroid, that as that gets better, there's a spin-off. And you already talked about that earlier with the lady with the hives and the weight loss and so on. tell us some other stories. I just love the spin-off stories. Tell us some other examples or spin-off benefits that you've seen, but when you're working with your clients.
Sure. I mean, I had a young woman that came in that had a Hashimoto's diagnosis and had been working with that diagnosis for a while, but basically had very few foods that she could eat, was beyond fatigued and exhausted all the time. She was married, but she was getting ready to get a hysterectomy or have her tubes tied so that she wouldn't pass on her crappy genes. That is what she had called it. And that really broke my heart because I was like, well, these genes aren't crappy. There's other things. And so together we figured out, she went and got tested for SIBO and it was positive. And so we started working with SIBO and then healing the gut underneath the SIBO. And then lo and behold, the Hashis started to calm down. She went down on her thyroid meds. And then now this was a little while ago. And she called me just like 6 months ago to let me know that she was pregnant. So to me, that like just gets me goosebumps of just like helping someone like change that limiting belief. It's not about the genes. Like well, there's some of that in there, but for her, it turned her around so much that she was excited to be a mom. And so that's awesome.
I mean, before you share another example, it just speaks to the depth of the pain people are suffering with. You know that firsthand, but to go to that extreme length because you're like, gosh, I would not want to pass this state of health onto anyone I love. So I'm not going to like that extreme and to wow. And look, that I love that story. I do actually literally have goosebumps from that story. I love it. Okay. And I think you had another one you were going to share.
Yeah. Well, and I think the important thing to remember here is that SIBO, yeah, it might be an imbalance of bacteria in the gut, but its effects are far reaching in the system. Like I've had people with SIBO that don't even have any gut symptoms. They just have other things going on. So I think it's important, like when you think about the ripple effect, like I had this one person, it was a man actually, and he called me to help him heal his gut. And he had chronic aches and pains, like so much chronic pain. And he had an IBS diagnosis. He hadn't had a SIBO diagnosis. So I just worked to help him heal his gut and to figure out the things that were blocking his gut from healing, like finding his root cause. And he changed his diet. He changed his lifestyle habits. And his energy and mental clarity got better. But in about 2 months, the coolest thing was, yeah, he lost 15 pounds, but he became more active because his body didn't hurt anymore. But the best thing was that his wife and his kids rallied around him and followed the same food routine and lifestyle routine that he was doing. And what he said, and this part kind of brought a tear to my eye when he told me, it was like his whole family was getting along better. Like they actually were relating to each other better and they weren't having as many angry and agitated outbursts and they just were harmonizing like together. And to me, like the whole family won, right? They all found that together and moved forward together. So that's really cool. I love that.
I love that too. I mean, what a difference. And each client has an impact and a ripple with their friends, their family, their children, the next generation. It's huge. That's why I love speaking to and working with health coaches and hearing your stories. I mean, you guys are light workers.
Oh, I just have one more I have to tell you about because it's real quick. But way back in the beginning of my work, because of my experience with my son, I had someone come in whose daughter had just been gotten a mute diagnosis. She didn't talk when she was young. She wouldn't talk. And immediately I was like, shoot, okay, what do we do for someone who's on like the autism spectrum or the gut spectrum, like what's going on? So we just started doing little things. And the biggest thing was I had them remove dairy and gluten because those were messing, I think, with her brain health and lots more probiotics, among other things. And he sent me an email 4 months later that her daughter, they removed the mute diagnosis. She was able to go back to school and she started talking. I mean, really, like that kid was only 6 years old or 7 years old. I mean, they could have been their whole life in this one direction, and we just made just a few changes. The rest of the family got more healthy as they went too, but that little child, now they're able to show up in the world in a much different place, and her gut was just out of whack. It didn't take much.
Wow. It's so eye-opening for a lot of people who maybe have never heard about or link with gut, but even still, even if you kind of have been with this work, it's still very profound, the simplicity of it, and yet the solution is much more simple sometimes than we can imagine. The problem very complex, but the
Hmm.
solution often simple. Oh, so good. So good. I love that. So for those who are listening and they want to connect with you, what they might have questions, they might not know if they have SIBO or not, but or they might be a veteran. I know you help a lot of veterans, so with all sorts of things, and they often don't usually have SIBO, so it's just really one of those highlighting claims to fame that you really are real. That's like an area of expertise. But if somebody's struggling with their health and they're like, I want to talk to this girl because maybe she could help me with myself or someone I love, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, of course. I would love that. So I can be found at KarenMitchellWellness.com. And I can also be found on Instagram at Karen Mitchell Wellness.
Awesome. So, and Karen, Karen, and Mitchell, Mitchell, wellness. So
Correct.
it was such a pleasure to chat with you. If you guys have questions, pop them in the comments here, or I would just go over on Karen's website. I think she's got a free starter kit. There's a way to connect with her. You can ask her questions yourself. That's probably the easiest way. And I want to just thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shauna. I really appreciate your time and your energy. And I appreciate just sharing my story a little bit.
Yeah, it's important to get out there that people have hope, that they don't have to wait 15 years struggling. There is an easier, simpler solution that can have some profound impact. So I love it. Well, that's it for this episode of Health Coach TV. If you like this, be sure to like and share and pop in the comments. What did you think about this? Do you know of someone who has SIBO? Feel free to share with people who are struggling with their gut health in particular. If you have a topic you want to hear from us, then be sure to put that in the comments and we'll look for an expert in that field. And with that, have a phenomenal week. And of course, be good for you.